You hear how hoarse my voice is. It has nothing to do with being sick. I was preaching yesterday to over 100 teenagers at an event. Don't worry, everyone was nicely social distanced, very safe. I was very far from them, hence the straining of my voice to reach the kids in the back of the gymnasium as I gave a retreat to a group of high school kids yesterday. I used to travel about doing high school retreats all the time, and I would preach, and so I can usually go a full weekend with no problem giving 5 or 6 one-hour conferences, but I'm a little out of practice, so I need to get my vocal muscles back and running, so it's a little hoarse today from preaching too much. You're probably asking yourself, how many martyrs are there from the French Revolution? It seems that every other week I'm putting on red vestments and celebrating these martyrs from the French Revolution. Well, there was a lot. Today we celebrate particularly 5 Franciscans who gave their lives for Christ in 1794 as the French Revolution sought to kill those who would not agree to the new way of revolution and so forth. It was a horrible, horrible time. There's a book, and the name of the book just escaped me. It's a fantastic read. The Reign of Terror, I think it's called. The Reign of Terror. And it speaks about particularly, To Quell the Terror. To Quell the Terror by Ignatius Press. To Quell the Terror. And it speaks in the beginning of the book about what exactly the French Revolution was. And just how bad it was. And how evil it was. How sinister it was. And then the book goes on to speak about a group of Carmelite nuns who chose to offer their lives in sacrifice to quell the terror, to end the terror of what was happening during the French Revolution. And so beautifully it tells the story of how each of these sisters ascended the scaffolding and one by one were beheaded for the faith. And as they would go up to prepare to be martyred, the first nun would say to the superior, "Permission to die, mother." Permission granted. Went up the scaffolding, and the sisters were singing to Our Lady as each of them were giving their lives for Christ. To finally the last one was killed for the faith, and it ended the song of the sisters. But so beautifully, 10 days later, the Reign of Terror ended, and the leader of the revolution was beheaded himself on his own guillotine because of the horror of what he had done. And so there are many, many martyrs from the French Revolution, many who laid down their lives for Christ, who would rather die than betray Christ. They say it was a time comparable only to the first days of Christianity. That's how bad it was. Similar to the days when the Romans were being killed in the Forum or in the Colosseum. It was similar to those days. So many died for the faith. Anyway, it was a difficult time, and something the church always needs to be attentive to when the culture begins to turn away from Christ. A post-Christian culture is far worse than a pre-Christian culture. A pre-Christian culture that doesn't know Christ may persecute the faith, but eventually they come to see the faith and embrace it. A post-Christian culture has dismissed Christ, and after dismissing him, turned to evil. And our Lord said, when the devil is cast out, it comes back to where it left. It finds it swept clean, in other words, void of faith. It brings back 7 demons worse than itself. And so this is something we always have to be attentive to in culture, especially when the culture begins to turn away from the faith. Our Lord said that certain demons can only be cast out through prayer and fasting. And there are certain demons, when they come back, so powerful. The evil we see in our own culture today of abortion and euthanasia and so forth. These are demons far worse than the ones that we hear when the first Christians arrived and brought Christianity. Demons worse than themselves have come back and claimed the lives of so many unborn children. And now the elderly or children, because they have Down syndrome and discovered they have Down syndrome in the womb, are being aborted. To obliterate Down syndrome from the world is to obliterate love. There's nothing more loving than a child with Down syndrome. They're just one big bundle of love. The less Down syndrome people there are in the world, the less hugs there are. The most beautiful people, and yet the culture is curing it by aborting them. Dr. Jean Lejeune, who discovered the chromosome that leads to Down syndrome, that he loved the Down syndrome people so much that he was horrified. He died brokenhearted to learn that his discovery was being used to kill Down syndrome children in the womb. His wife said he died a broken man because of it, that he discovered it to help them. It was being used to kill them. These are demons far worse than the ones who we hear before when Christianity was brought to this land. And we always need to pray. Certain demons, our Lord said, can only be cast out through prayer and fasting. We look at our Lord today in this beautiful work that he's doing. He's casting out demons today. They come out shrieking, "You are the Son of God," and rebukes them and tells them not to speak. But after a long day of preaching, long day of healing, a long day of driving out demons, what does our Lord do? He goes to a deserted place. He goes to the quiet to pray. So important for us to find that quiet place each day to pray, to be alone with God, to spend that time of growing in intimate union with God, so that as we grow in union of God, grace can flow more freely through us. You know, by canon law, we priests, we have to make a retreat once a year. Have to do it at least once a year, but we're encouraged to do more than that. Hence, while I'll be running away at the end of the month for 2 weeks of hermitage, I'm going to go run away into a silent solitude for hermitage, into the mountains, the nice quiet solitude retreat, because it's required. It's necessary for me to be a good priest to you. I need to be in union with God. And the more I draw into prayer and closer to God, the better I will be for the parish. Just as each of us are called to deep, intimate union with God, each one of you. To turn off every once in a while, to turn off the phone. It's okay. Remember the days when we lived without the phone on 24/7? When no one was allowed to answer the phone during dinner? Remember those days? Why, when I was growing up at 5 o'clock, if the phone rang during dinner time, God help anyone who tried to answer it, and God help the person trying to call. It was not a very pleasant moment, because it was dinner time. There was quiet. TVs went off at a certain time. It was quiet. We didn't have Facebook and YouTube constantly going, and constant news cycles to fill our ears and our minds. Even personally, it's too much information for us. Our intellect seeks knowledge. However, sometimes the knowledge we need to seek is in the quiet with God, the intimacy with him. Jesus sets that beautiful example to be able to sit and go away and to be quiet and alone with God, so that God can truly be intimate with us. God desires that time with us. He wants us to be alone with him. He wants to be alone with us. So today, as we think about all these various things and so forth and events in our lives, I think just to leave with this one word of just alone. Alone. How to be alone with God and to be at peace. When one is alone with God, one discovers God is everywhere, and one is never truly alone. But to find that quietness with him and find that peace, and through that intimacy, become a greater avenue of God's mercy and grace upon this world. May God bless you, and Mary keep you.